Good morning, everybody. You tuned into Crackcore. Thank you for being here with me today. Today is Sunday the 17th of March 2024. Today we're going to be talking about how your family values are not conducive to profits in the ways of business, and how your employers most likely do not respect or value the fact that you are a traditional family man in the workplace. Or that being said, a traditional family woman in the workplace. Now, what do I mean first and foremost by traditional family, man or woman? Well, in the traditional sense, parents want to be there for their kids. They want to raise their children, at least they want to play a large part in raising their children. They want to be at home as much as they can because their family is where their priorities lie. Now, in the modern age, we find ourselves being kind of taught from a very early age, or at least it's promoted, that to be an executive couple, so to speak, you know, you can only get a house in a lot of places. People will only rent a house to you if you are an executive couple. Now, when did that become a thing, man? You know, an executive couple shouldn't be the criteria for, you know, for renting a property. But nowadays, we're in this world where that is a thing. It's kind of promoted that that's the way forward. But what that does mean is you spend less and less time at home because, you know, by design, if both people are going out to work, who's looking after the kids? Well, you've got to pay someone, haven't you? You've got to pay for childcare. You've got to pay for nursery. You know, and let's just say you're a single parent. Let's just say you're a single mum, right? What the benefits agency, the Department of Social Security, what they will do is they will pay. They will pay for you to be off work for something like 6 months to a year. I think it's 6 months is the preferred length of time. Now, ultimately, what that means is after the, say, 6 months period is over, they'll stop paying you money, so you've got to get back to work. So, I mean, what that means is they expect you to hand your kids over from 6 months on. Now, I could be wrong on that, but it's definitely not more than a year. I'd say go and look that up because I might have it a bit twisted. But it's not very long. I mean, even if it's a year, if anybody out there has had kids, right? A year old, your child's not ready to be handed away to somebody. Would you want to give your kid away at a year old? I don't think so. Most parents don't want to give their kids away at all. Not even at 5 years old when they're going to actual primary school. Have you noticed now, back in, say, the 80s and 90s, there was no such thing as reception. But nowadays you've got reception at school. So you can be allowed to give your children away a year earlier. Now, this is all apparently to facilitate working families, which will come across as convenient, I'm sure. However, most things offered by the state under the guise of convenience will not actually be very convenient or conducive to the raising of your children or to the upkeep of your nucleus, the upkeep of your traditional family. It's my firm belief that these people know, the people that make these rules and legislations, they know that the traditional family is what keeps society strong. Because at that point you're able to educate your children in a way that is promotional of things like unity, and sticking together is strength and all of that kind of stuff, helping each other out. It gives children stability. And with stability comes less anxiety. With stability comes the ability to actually become who you're going to be. Confidence. All right? All of these things come from stability. If you don't feel stable, you're less likely to take that step. All right? So these people, I'm sure, know this. And you hand your children away to people that are educated by the state. The curriculum is given by the state. You have to pass tests created by the state. Tests that say you're worthy to look after other people's children are created by the state. So you have to basically pass the test of somebody that wants to take people's children away for their own personal indoctrination. So you have to prove that you're worthy, therefore, to these oligarchs, to these overlords, that you are capable of doing their job the way that they want you to do it, okay? That's the key. They don't, and this is the problem, they don't want parents raising their kids because they know full well that people would raise their children a lot differently in comparison to the way the state is going to raise them. Ask yourself this question: is the state, is the government and the people behind them, the lobbyists, have they got anybody's best interests at heart? At this point, I think it's easy enough to see who these people are, what their intentions are. Look at the world around us, look at the way that it's being pushed. It's not for the betterment or for the benefit of us, the people, is it? No. As a matter of fact, it's only ever about us sacrificing as much of our time as possible for the betterment of capitalism, consumerism, conformity, handing away our power. And as soon as we hand our children away, we hand away the power for the next generation, because you're offering them up as sacrifice to the state. Tell me I'm wrong. So anyway, how does this work into, your work? Well, I'll tell you. Because it's about sacrificing your time, first and foremost. If you've got family values traditionally at home, and you want to be a valid part of your family, you want to be there for your family, you want to raise your children, or at least have as much an impact on the raising of your children as possible. And if that's your mindset, well, then I would say you should be raising your children. That's the right mindset. To want to play an active role in the raising of your children is the right mindset. So by default, I would say that you're the right kind of person. It shows that you're attentive, that you give a shit. And they're the right kind of values that want to be passed on to children, of course. And there we have it. So when you go to work and you're one of these types of people, well, realistically, when you account for how long it takes you to get ready in the morning, how long it takes you to wind down at night when you've gotten home, how many hours, realistically, considering there's only 24 hours in a day, can you work and still be an integral part of your family? I would say 8, maybe 10 hours of actual work time being at the place of business is more than enough, right? And anything after 10 hours, say you start looking at 12, 13 hours, that starts to become a detriment with regards to your family life. But you see, businesses don't like this. They want you to be at work as much as they say so. They don't want you to have any outside commitments, or at least they want you to have as little as possible. So just take a look around the next time you're at work. Who is the guy that is getting the most praise? Who's the guy that's in favour the most with your bosses? I dare say that person may work the hardest. They may do the best work. But that's because they've dedicated themselves solely to that role. And by default, they sacrifice most of their time, I dare say, to that job. And the bosses love that. Of course, it's about maintaining the amassment, if that's even a real word, of wealth. They want to amass more wealth, and they want to maintain the production of that wealth. So they need people in place that are going to facilitate that. And you can't facilitate that if your priorities are at home. Your priorities need to be with that job. But you see, the problem is, enter capitalism, right? Because that's the problem. It's all about earning money. It's all about making the most amount of profit for the least amount of outward fucking giving. It's like making the most amount of money from the smallest amount of outlay. So what they want is to have people working as much as they possibly can, so they can pay you as minimal a wage as possible and get you to work as much as possible, therefore creating that balance, or at least the imbalance in our respect, for them to earn the most amount of money from you. Family values do not fit into that construct. They do not. And I'll put it down like this. If you've got 6 people stood in front of a boss and there's only 5 jobs going that day, 5 of those people don't have a family, or at least they're willing to sacrifice their family time for that job, and therefore are willing to work longer hours. Let's just say 15, 16 hour day. And you've got another guy stood there who's got a family, and he can work 10 hours because he wants to be there for his family. He wants to put his children to bed at night. You know, he wants his kids to feel secure and safe, that they've got a mum and a dad who love them, that are going to be there for them no matter what. Who do you think that boss is going to choose for those jobs? They're not going to choose the guy with the family, or at least the guy who wants to be there for his family. Oh no, it's more profitable for them to choose the other 5 people that are willing to sacrifice all of their time. Now, a lot of people are probably sitting here right now thinking, well, that's just business, mate. And I'm not disputing that. In fact, I'm saying, yes, that is business, and that is the problem with business. The capitalist machine, the corporate machine, allows primarily for people that are willing to sacrifice more and more of their time for that job. And unfortunately, what that does naturally is it pushes out people with traditional family values. It pushes out the need, or at least the ability, to raise a family and to strengthen the future generations. It renders it fucking stagnant and null and void. You can't do it. Because eventually these people get pushed out. Now, in my opinion, businesses are taking advantage here of a floodgate that's been opened in the ways of immigration workers. Because whereas immigration workers are quite literally just doing the same thing, taking advantage of a situation to better their own life, and how could you say that that's a bad thing? Because you can't knock the hustle, brother. Somebody is literally traveling from continent to continent to earn money for their family so they can send that money back home where it's worth more and make a better life for themselves and their family in the long term. That is very commendable. I just wish their families lived here, because then they'd actually have their family values seated here. Because at this point, they don't need to go home in this country because their families aren't there. It's most likely a shared house. It's most likely an empty apartment where they're going to go home, have some food. Their whole life is about work, because that's what they're here. That's what their motivations are in this country, is work, earn as much money as possible, send it back so their family and their life can be better there. And business owners are taking advantage of this and using these immigrant workers in this way, which ultimately pushes out people that are native to this country, that actually have their families and their priorities based and seeded in this country. So it creates a huge imbalance. And like I've said, immigrant workers are doing valuable jobs, but you see, they are valued more in the workforce because they're willing to work more. And they're just slaves like everybody else, but they are being utilized in a way that ultimately pushes out the honest, hard-working individual that goes to work to support their family in this country. Now, before you know it, what will happen is the workforce will be entirely flooded with people that are willing to sacrifice more and more time. That doesn't mean to say flooded with immigrant workers, although I dare say the predominant amount will be, because they are more conditioned given their motivations to do so. But you will find that there are many, many people native to the UK that are willing to do this as well, of course. To say that it's an immigration problem wholeheartedly wouldn't be the truth. And I wouldn't necessarily say it's an immigration problem. I would say the only problem really in immigration would be the fact they're sending their money out, and then that has an impact on the economy and stuff. But that's a different argument. I would say it's more in line with saying that it's not necessarily an immigration problem. It's a problem with the corporatocracy taking advantage of the immigration workforce. Because what that does is it devalues to the point where people aren't able to work eventually, in my opinion. It devalues traditional homestead people. And that is dangerous, and I dare say it's by design, because it's dangerous to the point where folks aren't going to be able to raise their own families. And the dilution of family values, the dilution of strength in the family unit, and therefore in society, will become so apparent that the complete and entire takeover will be just an absolute fucking steamroller event. There'll be no resistance to it, because how could there be? And this is happening before our eyes, people. You know? Before you know it, the workforce will be entirely flooded with people that are willing to sacrifice more and more, and people that are willing to sacrifice less based on their traditional family values will be forced out. And it's as simple as that. And the people that have their family values seated in this country, the people that have their commitments at home, will be forced out of work. They won't be able to work. They'll end up on job seekers allowance, or they'll end up on the dole somehow, social security, And you tell me that's not going to start to bring in the social credit system. You know, at least it builds a framework for it, doesn't it? It builds a need, because first of all, before you can implement anything like that, you've got to have the required need for it in the first place, so people will accept it. All right? No one's going to say, okay, we'll fund the building of a bridge unless there's a river there first to build the bridge over. All right? So it kind of lays out the framework for the need of something like a social credit system. Now you look at, for instance, you look at, say, the British nucleus family. It's a strong unit, but over the years it's been chipped away at and chipped away at by many different things. Now ultimately, you've got all these different agendas running side by side. You've got the trans agenda, you've got things like you know, the fake women's rights movement that comes across and starts to disempower women even though it says it's empowering them. And families are breaking down because the traditional values are being destroyed. Now that does weaken society. Without that, we start to fall away over the generations. And I would say that's the key. If more and more people are here in this country with their families, and their family values are seated here, well then what will happen is businesses won't be able to take advantage of this fissure, this divide in the workforce that they're able to kind of manipulate to their own gain. They won't be able to do that, and they'll have to adhere to facilitating workers that are more traditional in the ways that they want to live their life. And you know, these companies will have to fall in line, but unfortunately, unless they're made to do that by us, the people, if we keep giving them openings into breaking apart society for their own personal gain and a massive wealth, well, it's going to be on us, isn't it? It'll be on our heads, so be it. So I would say stick to your own family values and try and make sure that as a working man or a working woman that you try and promote spending time with your family and kids as much as possible, you know, and speak to your fellow workers and see where they lie with all of this. Maybe start trying to build some unions. I think it takes 5 to 7 people to start a union. Just fucking start one. Doesn't take a lot. Just sit down with a few people and see what their mindset is, and if it aligns with yours and everybody's got the same views and opinions, well then start a fucking union. People power is the best type of power, trust me. Start a union and start to make a change, and before you know it, you never know, the world might turn around. But on that note, this is Cragcore signing off. Thank you for being here with me today. I do appreciate it. I'm going to wish love and peace to all things everywhere. Peace.